not many people have the distinction of having the title of their talk as the gurus speak from the top of the mountain. But Peter Hogan and Graeme Colley, you did have that distinction. How was it being gurus? Let's start with that.
It went pretty well, actually, surprisingly. It's always a bit of a risk, isn't it? But no, we had a good session, a lot of questions being asked, which is what we hope for.
Well, I suppose one of the sort of interesting and possibly tricky things is to have a session set up where it is for questions, and often people aren't that forthcoming. You know, it's...
Yes, at one stage there were only about 4 people in the room as well, which is a bit of a worry.
So yeah, it's pretty quiet.
But no, it went well, and we did have a few backup questions which we warmed them up with a bit, and then we got the questions coming through.
Okay, you didn't have to say that. You did the usual sort of stuff, or the expected stuff. You know, you had gearing and loans, contributions, property within SMSFs. What sort of things, once they did get warmed up, surprised you?
Well, there was a question about ruling from the grave, and then there was another one about bankruptcy. And
yeah, well, let's talk about the ruling from the grave, because that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, that was about blended families where the surviving spouse gets the pension, and then the person who's died only wants the money to go back to their kids rather than the surviving spouse's kids, and how you structure that, and whether a self-managed fund is the right way to do it.
Okay, and what's the answer to that? Is it the right?
Don't use your self-managed super fund
for that.
Yeah, no, it's very hard to do it because once you hand the money over, that becomes that person's money.
Yeah.
And they control the capital. So basically, they have to be a member of the fund because they're receiving an income from the fund. They have to be trustee, and as I think Bryce described it, they're holding the purse strings then, and they can just do whatever they like.
Right.
So you're much better actually using the will, using a testamentary trust or something like that to direct the money.
I think one of the interesting things about SPAA this year, there's been quite a lot of talk about ruling from the grave.
Yeah.
Certainly with the, maybe 4 or 5 different sessions and how it works and how it doesn't work. And
it's something that really excites clients, I find. You know, you get in a room of people who have superannuation in their own funds, who are actually trustees as opposed to the people who advise them.
Yeah.
And you can talk about anything and they'll look vaguely interested, but you start talking about what happens on their death and you have 100% attention.
Yeah.
And they'll listen to you for as long as you're prepared to talk. It's really
quite
interesting.
And is that an age thing, do you think? Like once they get closer to, sort of over 50s and stuff?
Well, it's one of the main drivers, I think, for people having self-managed funds as well, isn't it? Is to have a little bit more control over their estate planning.
Yeah.
So, that's often a driver as to why they've got one in the first place. Hence
that's right.
the interest. Yeah.
All right, what about the RAM raid question? Just talk me through that one.
That was a funny one in that a self-managed super fund owned business or a property, and there was a big roller door that they used to lock the building up with, and someone parked the car in the roller door. And so they're waiting.
Parked the car in the roller door.
In the roller door, so it didn't do the roller door much good at all.
Right.
But the problem is that they couldn't actually then lock the premises up, and they're running a business out of these premises. And they found themselves in a situation where the majority of the fund's assets were this building, and they really didn't have any spare cash inside the fund. They didn't want to necessarily make a contribution to the fund, but the insurer was a bit slow in paying as well. So they had this problem of how do we secure the building when the insurer took 4 months to pay the money, and they didn't have any other money in the fund. So we're working out different ways perhaps they could get the cash in without it necessarily being treated as a contribution to the fund, because once it's in there, it means we're stuck in there. They wouldn't be able to be reimbursed for it later on.
Okay.
So I think Bryce suggested we should just break the law, actually, was probably the simplest solution, and we should just make a loan to the fund, which is not actually legally possible to do, but he sort of thought, what's the ATO going to do anyway?
Right.
Yeah, that's right. That compliance risk is something you take and you probably won't.
Do you get surprised by questions you get asked? I mean, like you would see and hear a lot of different things, but sometimes the stuff come up, so Graeme, for instance, that we really just go, gee, wow. These are the days I like being in this industry because I've never had to think of, like the RAM raid, I've never had to think of something like that before.
Yeah, well, the Pride of Lions was the best one.
Yeah, so what's that one?
Well, a circus was going to buy some lions, right? So the super fund wanted to buy the lions from the circus so they could run it, and how they were going to rent them out and how they were going to feed them and all those sort of things in the super fund. So that was pretty amusing sort of thing.
Yeah.
And can you?
Horse syndicates is another one.
Horse syndicates?
Yeah,
that's right.
Actually, that's an interesting one. So I think we all know someone who owns horses.
Yeah.
Can you run it?
I don't think so. I don't think it's ever a good investment. I mean, they always say, but I might win.
Yeah, I know.
Some money, and it could be a good return for the fund.
But say if you did it, say if you could can you get a horse into a fund?
Yeah, you could certainly have it in there, but I mean, you've got to look at it from an investment point of view. Is it, like Peter said, are they going to make money out of it?
and the reality is it's going to cost you money, right?
Yeah, but if you have a Maccabi Diva, for instance.
Yeah, not every fund's
No,
got
I understand that. I'm not talking about real life. I'm talking about if, as a potential horse owner, I could have if you had a Maccabi Diva in your fund, that could be. Could it work?
Yep. In theory, yes. It's income. So
Yeah.
it would be treated as carrying on a business of horse racing and training and so on, I guess.
Okay.
A trustee of your fund. So in theory, yeah, is it a good investment from a sole purpose tense point of view? Probably not.
Right. But see, now you're just sounding sensible. how often do you have questions that are so ridiculous, or not? Ridiculous to you as sensible people.
Yeah, I think it's a classic. Those sort of things happen all the time. People just go off and do things that they think are perfectly reasonable.
Yeah.
And get it so wrong.
Yeah.
from a legal point of view.
Okay.
So
overseas holidays for trustees doing their trustee meeting overseas, so they pay for the super fund, their holiday out of the super fund and all that.
That was
sort
a case
What's wrong
just
with that?
recently.
What's wrong with that?
That's right. Yeah.
Buy a US property inside your super fund and just go to the US to visit it twice a year.
So you can't do that.
Not really.
No.
I mean, yes, you can, and the fund shouldn't be paying for your airfares and so on. That sort.
So you're going to have to repay your last holiday back, are you?
No. So there is an aspect of how far can I bend, which is really what people are trying to do.
Yeah. Well, there's always a temptation. I mean, the thing with self-managed super funds, there is no third party between the trustees and their money.
Yeah.
To sort of say, I don't think that's a good idea or it's a sensible idea. So they're making decisions, investment decisions about their own money, and they don't always go and get another opinion before they go off and do something. And that's the problem.
So my wife and I, we can go and have our trustee meeting.
In the US, yeah?
Not necessarily in the US, but we...
Vanuatu? Whatever you like. And the fund can pay for some of it. If you go for 2 weeks and you've had an hour trustee meeting, then 1 day of the 1/14th of the expense could be probably paid by the fund.
That's good to know.
That's all right. It's a discount.
See, that's why you guys are the gurus, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And did you like being called gurus? I don't know, did you come up with that, or was it Andrea going...
that was great.
No, it was my idea. I thought, well... Let's think of something silly, and so that's what we did.
There's nothing silly about it. Well, great to chat, and great to see you at Sparrow. So thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
And thanks, Graeme.
Thanks.